Hey, we're working on the Cadillac today. I already did a little video on lights. So you might notice it's a little brighter in here. See, more lights are hanging. But anyway, we're working on the Caddy. So I gotta get a little can of spray primer. I'm gonna prime that up a little bit. But I went around, the last time I was here, and it was about 3 days ago, I spot primed everything. Every spot that needed more primer, and I'm looking at them, I'm looking across them, and they're starting to look pretty good. I don't feel anything much that's gonna show up under the paint. So I'm gonna sand this thing off. I wanna get this roof painted, and I'd like to get it done today. If I can, that'll be awesome. If I can't, that's okay, I got tons of work to do. I'm thinking what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna spray the roof. It's gonna get a gloss black and an acrylic enamel, which the reason for that is it's pretty cheap, but it seems to hold up. I think it holds up better than the cheap urethanes. Connor painted his truck with Eastwood urethane, and 2 years later, it's so faded out, you can't even tell what color it was. So I gotta sand this out. I'm gonna sand it out with probably some 220 on the spots I just spot primed, just a little bit, and then I'll finish everything out with some 320, and then I'm gonna shoot the acrylic enamel right over that. So I've got most of this pretty good. That's got a little deviation in it, but you know what? I'm gonna live with that. That's good enough. This whole back deck looks pretty good. That won't be getting painted right now anyway. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna sand off the roof, get everything prepped for painting the roof. And I'm not gonna worry about sanding the rest of this because it's gonna get the black overspray on it and stuff. So I'll just sand all the rest of this car off after the black's painted. What I'll do is let it cure for a day or so, and then I'll tape it off. Oh, I got a little spot right there. Look at that. You can never get them all, it seems like. But that line looks pretty good. I mean, it might have a little wave in it there, but I can't worry about it to that point. I mean, that's what always happens with this stuff. It's where do you finally quit? Because, you know, I'm not doing a show car. I'm gonna do a driver car. I wanna be able to drive it. I don't wanna cry if it does get, you know, anytime a bird poops on it. But this is looking pretty good. It's gonna look like the vinyl top was never on there. It's gonna look like it didn't ever have all those rust holes that I patched and welded new patches in. So the dings, there's a couple dings that were in the roof. I think they're gonna be gone. Clean them all up. And I guess that's what I'm gonna do today is work on that. Now I'm gonna tape this off here because I figure that's just gonna be black. The rest of this won't. So I'm gonna do a little masking too because I don't want black overspray all over everything. I don't want to sand it off crazy. Obviously, I'll probably just have to mask this corner off a little bit with like one piece of paper. Just mask it quick. So that'll get black from there all the way up. Then I'm gonna come over and back here, I gotta figure out how I'm gonna make a nice cut line. Bring it around like that and then meet up with that body line somewhere in there. Somehow artistically in a way that will match the other side. So to do that, I'm thinking I'm gonna make me a little cardboard template because I can go on the other side, flip it, and have the same exact line. Maybe I'll even do a pencil line, the cardboard template, and then just tape right to the line. So I don't really have to do that part yet because I'll paint the black right down to this edge here. So when I tape it off, I know I've got all the black. So I've been sanding, I'm sanding around this car. Most of it's coming up pretty creamy. I mean, this is looking good. I sanded that out across here. I put a heavy coat of primer surfacer on here so I can sand it down nice and make sure none of the little spots where there were rivets pops up. And I got this pretty sanded out nice. You can see where I wore right through it into the first layer of primer. Things are looking pretty good. This is looking good. I got a little steel there, so I quit sanding, but I think I'm good enough. This is gonna get painted because I got it all except for that little spot right there, but that's like, I'm probably not gonna worry about it. I just can't kill myself on this car. I'm feeling across here. This feels pretty good. When I get to the other side, so over on this side, it's like I screwed up a little bit. Looks to me like I was sanding in this sort of direction with this nice wider block, taking it off with 220 grit. So I'm going down through the primer and sanding it all off. And you're seeing a lot of high spots coming up where there's the old putty. It's the very thin layer of putty I put across there to blend out all the welded patches I had put in. So as I feel across this, I can feel it. It's like just a little bit like a raise right there. It's raised, and you can tell that's raised because that's what's getting sanded off the most with a straight block. As I go across with a straight block, it's taking most material off where I'm getting down to the putty again. I'm not sure what to do. I think I'll sand it off, and right here, I really can feel it. That might be noticeable through the paint. And although I'm not doing a show job, I don't want it to have noticeable flaws under the paint because it just looked terrible. I can feel it. I think what I'm gonna wind up doing is going back to 80 grit on the DA and just taking this down smooth. And then starting over as far as priming and blocking out. I think before I go hog wild with 80 grit, I'll do 220 on the DA. See what that does. get all the orange peel off because this primer goes on. Oh, here's a good spot. Look at this. See right here? You see where it's just on this edge here? I'm just not quite getting it off. So probably what I will do is I'll probably hand sand with just my hand just to get that broke off. Once I'm past the danger of putting, you know, waves and stuff in it, I'll just give it a little hand sand just to clean up this kind of stuff. I'm pretty confident that I can get enough orange peel in the paint coat. I don't really need it in the primer below it, so that's all got to go. All right, so I just went over this whole thing with 320 on this kind of a hard block. So it really peeled up some dust. It's funny how you spray this stuff on, then you try to sand most of it all back off. I still got some little spots. I'm going to go over the whole thing again with a hand sand just to wipe it off kind of before I paint. Even though I could cover it up and stuff, I think what I'm going to do is hold off on painting the roof until I get more of this body work done on the whole car, so I kind of can paint the roof one day, probably paint the red the next, you know, just run right into it. That way I don't have to panic so much about scuffing up the black because it's going to overspray. I think I'm going to play it safe and go ahead and get this body work tuned up even more before I do the roof. Sanding, sanding, sanding! Well, I got a whole bunch more sanded on this thing. The hood's all sanded down. I'm going to sand off the tops of the fenders, and then I'm going to hoist the car up a little bit so I don't have to bend over and sand way low on my knees and everything. Guess what? I'm getting older. But anyway, I got this sanded out. I put a smear of finishing putty here, the spot putty, and I think I got it pretty decent. It still has a little, but hardly at all noticeable. I think I'm going to be able to paint over that, and I think it's going to look okay. So I got it sanded out with 80 grit. I'm going to hit it with 220, and then I'll prime it. Well, I got this old girl just about all sanded off. I did kind of quit sanding because I got distracted and started focusing on something else, these skirts. Now, I've already sanded this one down with some 80 grit and a DA. Looks like I got to hit a couple more spots. And I'm noticing a couple issues. I got this issue here, obviously. That was all bubbled up when I ground it off. Now it's got holes in it. Swiss cheese. I got a spot over here. It's rusty on the back side here. And you can see the holes. And over on this side, you can see the holes. So I don't know if I cut this piece out, put a new piece in, or if I just weld that up or what. Clean it up, Dynaglass it. I don't know what to do. So, well, I think what I'm going to do for right now, for today, I'm going to strip these down, get them cleaned up, and get all the rusty spots bare. I did sandblast. You can tell I got sand all over, which is another mess. And when I sandblasted, I use my little spot sandblaster. That thing works pretty good. You know, you could use one hand on the trigger, and then I can regulate the flow with the other hand, and it seems to work pretty good. It does go through a lot of sand. It uses up that whole container pretty quick, throws it all over the floor. So I got to carry on with that, but I do have rusty spots. I got this here, you know, this little spot, that leg. If I flip this thing over, I got rust here. I bet that goes all the way through. Stupid rust, but that's the game, trying to get ahead of rust. So I'm going to clean it all up, and I'm going to hit it with Ospo, let it sit overnight, and then I'll do the body work on it and get them sanded up and ready to paint. Well, here we go again. I'm going to take my little grinder and cut this out and weld a new patch in. I don't like this. It looks ugly, and I don't think I'm going to be able to fix it without putting a new patch in it. Yeah, since I'm not really sure what to do with situations like this, it's where that was put together. There's obviously no paint there. It was rusty between. So any place I see rust, I'm going to spray it up at the Ospo. I'm going to spray this whole thing up, let it flow back in there a little bit. Because that's supposed to leave a protective coating, so it can't hurt. Better than rust. You know, I can't tear all these pieces apart and fix it. I'll do that next time. Now, I've been trying to clean this thing up. I use wax and grease remover on it, and it didn't get all the grunge off. I got this off a guy. It had been stored in a warehouse upstairs in his automotive dealership. He's a used car dealer down in Scranton. Guy was a really super nice guy, and he's selling off stuff that his dad had collected over the years, and this was one of the items, and he said it sat upstairs in their warehouse for probably 20 years. The thing's perfect. I mean, other than that, but it's got a level of grunge on there that the wax and grease remover wouldn't take off. I even tried spilling on some lacquer thinner, and you can see where I spilled it on. It seemed to have cleaned it in just that spot, but then it dries quick. You know, it's hard to wipe around, but it definitely screwed up the paint. I mean, I wouldn't advise that to anybody trying to clean with lacquer thinner. It's very aggressive. So I'm going to let that 409, my favorite fallback, soak on there for a few minutes. I'm going to wipe it off. We'll see what it does. I want to see what the best way to get the main grunge off. You can see where it's really grungy here. And I don't think the 409's even touching it. Maybe I could hit that up a little better right there. Yeah, we'll see what happens. The 409 took off the majority of the grime, but I had to go back to lacquer thinner to get it cleaned up the rest of the way. I think I got it pretty good. I'm glad I didn't have to try to save this paint because I really screwed it up. I set the can on here, lacquer thinner can, and it left a print. Anyway, I'm gonna sand this thing down with 80 grit and then 220 grit, and I'll have it ready to prime when I go to prime everything else again. Okay, just about all day. I got a little patch welded in here, and then I put Dynaglass over it, and I had a little pinhole here. I welded that shut and patched it. Actually, to be honest, I don't know which one I did the wet to, but it doesn't matter. I got it done. I got to sand this stuff all off, and I got the I got the trunk lid sanded off, and there was a little dip here, so I stuck some of this Dynaglass in there. I'm gonna sand it off smooth. We'll see what we have to do after that. And I'm running around this car, and for a while I've been running this vacuum cleaner. As you can see, it is just covered with dirt. I don't know why this isn't focusing, but you know, it's just the whole car is covered with dirt. So what I'm doing now is I'm gonna suck it up with the vacuum cleaner. Then I'm gonna blow it off, which is gonna throw a bunch of dust in the air. So I'm gonna have to let it settle and then use the vacuum cleaner again. So it's been pretty much all day. And I've got that hood sanded. I've got these patched up. I rinsed off the OSPO on the backside. And man, I don't know what else I did, to be honest. So this leads me to this thought I had. How many of these cars, like a car like this, a 1970 Caddy, wasn't in horrible shape, not in perfect shape either, but I mean, I still got patches to put in the trunk. So I'm thinking, how many of these cars actually ever get done? There's a lot of them get scrapped, a lot get put into parts, a lot just sit out in the field and they rot, like this one did for quite a while, and it got down pretty good. I've got so much time wrapped up in this car. You can buy one. That would be super nice. I bet you 8-10 grand. It's also not gonna take a month and a half of working on it to get it so you can drive it, you know, and look decent. So anyway, I was just wondering about that. I'd love to get a comment from you guys on what percentage of these old cars you think actually get fixed. There's projects laying all over the place in people's barns and people's garages, half tore apart. How many of them really ever get done? It is so much work to get something like this to a level where just the driver levels of how many of these cars actually get done to the point where you can drive them down the road. I don't even care if the interior's ratty still, just something you can drive, you know what I mean? Just something you could just drive down the road, have a little fun in. How many of these cars, once they go off the road and sit around for a bunch of years, actually get back on the road? Very few, I bet you, very, very few. Well, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. A little bit preachy today. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. We'll see you on the next one.